Peace, this is Tareck Adeeb. It's time to go with the flow, and here's a quick synopsis of the week ahead astrologically. Apologies for being a little bit late onto the live. I'm absolutely exhausted right now. I'm back in Brooklyn, which is amazing. It's always good to be back here, no doubt. And I had a lot of fun as well. I was in Denver over the weekend, and I went to Red Rocks, which was really cool because it's such an amazing place. And it was so cool to see like one of my, I could say idols or peers, or certainly someone who is an inspiration from my hometown of Leeds, where I grew up. Nightmares on Wax, George Evelyn, and it was just really, really cool to see him playing at Red Rocks. And it was fascinating as well when you look at these nodes, the North Node in Aries and the South Node in Libra. If you go back to 2004 to 2006, when the nodes were at that timeline back then, and it was so interesting for me because that's when we were really hanging out, at that particular time, when I was going, I think, to Ibiza at that time, and hanging out in Leeds with the music scene, putting on events and things like that. And just to see that as an expression, of someone back then, obviously was doing really well back then, but to see it manifest into Red Rocks, it's remarkable how astrology works when you really start to look at these things. So really have a look back at 2004 to 2006. And I think it's December 2004 to the summer of 2006, or it's something like that. But when the North Node was in Aries and the South Node was in Libra, if you go back to that timeline and see how it all played out and see how it's playing out now, you can't make it up. You really, really can't. To see that, and it wasn't planned really. It was kind of completely random, just prolific. I didn't really make the connection until afterwards, and I thought, And then there was some friends of mine who came to England as well, from England, who came to visit. And it was weird because 4 or 5 years ago, in 2019, September of 2019, we were hanging out then, and how it happened, how they managed to, I was hanging out with them in London, and then how they managed to come here to visit was just bizarre. So again, this is when astrology becomes very interesting. Now we are moving into a very, very interesting period of time right now, and I think everyone's starting to feel a certain degree of momentum. I think everyone's finally starting to feel things moving forward, because we are coming out of what has been an incredibly sticky and arduous time. Hard to move forward, hard to make decisions, and with the we're out of the Mercury retrograde shadow. It's coming into the first aspect that happens tomorrow is that Mercury will be in Libra. So that's it now. We're into this South Node Libra, North Node Aries. We're really coming into the end of the last couple of years. The end of the Taurus Scorpio stuff, the Saturn Uranus square. We're really coming out of all of that, this month. And obviously we were coming into the eclipses, and that's why, everything is really starting to come into its new phase, and the old phase is really coming to an end. And then Venus also is coming into Virgo on the 8th, and that's it. This Virgo ends the Venus retrograde, which has been insane, really. When I look back on it, and if you're in a relationship that's gone through tumultuous, hard times, or you've had to look at some really deep, dark stuff, and you've actually survived and thrived, or you've forgiven, or you've recognized the differences, and you've done all that work, then you're in a whole new relationship now, really, and that's amazing. If your relationship has ended and that's it, and it's new beginnings, then so be it. Or likewise, if you've just been maintaining and supporting others, or you've got deeper, you've got into a whole deeper level of commitment. And this is all the stuff the Venus retrograde has been focusing on, because don't forget, everything is still retrograde. It's not like we're completely out of this. I shouldn't say everything now, because Mercury is gaining momentum. Venus is certainly going to feel very different now, into Virgo. But also Pluto goes direct, and yes, it takes a minute, for these outer moving planets to get going. It takes a second for the momentum, obviously Pluto is standing still pretty much right now, really. But again, that difference of retrograde to direct, they call it stationary direct, then that movement forward is always quite palpable. So the fact is that they go direct, that's very significant on the 10th of this month. And then we get the eclipses, which is what this week's all about. And don't forget, we've also got Mars moving into Scorpio. So this week is a very, very significant week. There's no doubt about it. We get 3 of the inner planets, or the personal planets, changing sign. Mercury into Libra tomorrow, Venus into Virgo on the 8th, Mars into Scorpio on the 12th. So it's very different from what we've been going through this summer. Obviously Mars is the only planet that's been direct. But Mars moving out of Libra, diplomatic Libra. The eclipse is happening on the 14th in Libra. So obviously that's huge. The new moon solar eclipse on the 14th, happening in the Saurus cycle, passing through America, so really relating back to 2017 eclipses. And not just that, goes further back, to the 60s. I think it's 69, but I'll have to qualify that next week. So we're getting these themes playing out, which again, as we move into this eclipse, and not just that, the experience of the eclipse, and then obviously things that happen after the eclipse, all of these are going to give us signals and signatures, or understanding, awareness of what's going to be happening in the next 6 months, and really the next year. We do have another eclipse at the end of this month as well, so we're really in it now. It's going to be very, very different from what we've experienced this summer, and it's going to be interesting. I mean, we'll talk about this at the end of the month, but yeah, like I say, when Mars squares and opposes Jupiter in Taurus, and we do get a lot of squares in oppositions. For example, Mercury is opposing Neptune at the moment. Mars opposes the true node on tomorrow. Mars squares Pluto as well, so Mars is moving fast. Venus opposes Saturn, which happens on the 10th, and then the Sun also opposes Chiron. So there's a lot going on, and it's these faster moving planets that have got the momentum right now, and how they're hitting these slower and retrograde planets is what the tension is. And really, just to sum that up, it's very much to do, again, with the new against the old. And it's also to do with the details and justice and sovereignty. These are the sorts of things that are happening. But yeah, that Mars into Scorpio is really going to set the tone of Scorpio, which obviously we're moving into Scorpio season at the end of the month. Which means, again, out with the old, in with the new. What dies, what is moving on, or ending, this grief cycle. Obviously it's Venus retrograde, very significant in terms of what's in, what's out. And I've been saying this a lot now. So it's a big deal. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, this solar eclipse, Libra energy, is not as intense as, let's say, how it's been before, the Scorpio, Taurus stuff. Still, it is relevant, especially to America. So again, when we're looking at diplomacy, we're looking at contracts, we're looking at aspects to do with others. There is a new beginning. An eclipse ends things and starts things. We can see it playing out massively in the world stage right now. What's going to happen in Ukraine? What's going to happen in America? I mean, there was almost a government shutdown. There's still a lot of contention about the financial stuff that's going on within America. There's obviously going to be a shift in this whole Ray Dalio thing. What's going to happen. So it's always interesting, eclipses, because you think it's going one way and then it can just change. and things get revealed as well. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the financial world. Like I say, the government didn't shut down in America, which could have been a huge, let's say a default or a change in the financial system, i.e. the world reserve currency, will have a huge impact on financial. You've got the Evergrande Chinese situation where it seems that China is not telling the world about its real situation economically. What happens again if something happens there? I believe the guy from Evergrande was sacked. This is stuff that's coming out. There's all sorts of weird stuff going on at the moment. But that's what I mean, eclipses reveal these things. So we've really got to pay attention to what happens in this next week. We've got to be mindful of any sort of world events that may well play out. And the beauty of this summer and the grueling aspect of this summer, why it's been tenuous, difficult, it's really forced us to look within, because it's always about looking within to look without. It's as within, so without. And it's also encouraged us to be honest about what we can deal with and what we can't deal with. So that's going to exacerbate and accelerate now with this eclipse, with Pluto going direct. Venus going to Virgo, it's much more to do with detail now. It's not as much about the heart, if you want to call that Leo. It's not so much about love, in the sense of, obviously this Venus retrograde has been affecting our intimate others, family, the people that are close to us. But now it becomes a lot more practical. So the romance or the forgiveness side of it all kind of goes a little bit. It's much more to do with what's serving me practically now, and if it's not serving me practically, the ruthlessness of Mars going into Scorpio might really, really cut things. Likewise with the eclipses, they naturally cut things. With Pluto going direct, especially in Capricorn, because it's the last, really, one final little stint of Capricorn next year. But really, that's it. The majority of this Capricorn now is coming to an end. It's going direct. It will be in Aquarius in January. So everything is moving into this new world now. Very important to have pivoted into this new world with the right people. And yes, we've still got until January next year to go to really get our ducks in a row. But still, this is going to be very stark now. So get ready. There's a lot of tension, and it's a big month, October. You've got to be ready for it, or you've got to be allowing, or you've got to recognise what is in and what is out. So we've had the opportunity in the summer to really get clear about it as best as we can, be honest about it as best we can. How it plays out now could be quite a lot more extreme, if you see what I mean. It could be a lot more definitive, and hang in there. I hope that these conversations have helped with it. I hope it's given you an insight, or it's given you the best way to cope, because this is a big one this month, and unexpected things can happen with eclipses. For example, I'm going to England this week now. It was unexpected, to deal with the old, to deal with stuff that needs to be removed, things that need to end, and you've got to be prepared for that. So with that, take care, and I'll catch you soon. Be your way to show the way. Peace.